From Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation, it's time to take 10 minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein.
Welcome to our discussion of the binding of Isaac. What was Avraham thinking? We have two options when we think about Avraham's role in the binding of Isaac. One is we can imagine him as a devoted servant of God, prepared to absolutely offer his son without any hesitation and fully appreciating that that's what's being asked of him. Second view is that he had a hunch, that he had an idea, that he had some sort of a sense that he would not actually have to offer his son. After all, would God ask him to offer his son? Would God ask for human sacrifice? Is it possible that the merciful God who created the world, who put us all here, who feeds us and provides for us every second, who promised Abraham great things, not only about his children, but about him himself, would he ask him to slaughter his son? These are the two views, and I'd like to examine them through the verses and through the eyes of the commentaries. There are three places where we might raise this question within the verses of the binding of Isaac. The first is Hashem says to him, "Haleu sham le'olah," and offer him there as an offering. Now that's the English translation. The literal translation is, and you should bring him up there as someone who is brought up. In other words, an olah can be a Holocaust offering, a burnt offering, an offering in which the offering goes up, completely consumed up on the altar. But it can also mean aliyah, oleh, to go up. And haleu sham le'olah, bring him up as an elevation. Put your child on the altar. You had a child, as the Midrash says, you didn't really thank me for him. Take the child that I gave you, put him on the altar and say, as a way of saying thank you. Not on an altar with fire, just on top of an altar. Now, if that's the case, then there's some room for Abraham to interpret that he's not going to really have to slaughter the son. In fact, Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor says that that was the true meaning. It never meant that Avraham should slaughter his son, just Avraham misunderstood it that way. Now, we've solved one problem, created another. We've solved the problem that how could God change his mind? He told him to offer him, then he told him not to offer him. So the answer is, he never told him to offer him. He told him to bring him up. He brought him up and he was finished. God was consistent. However, we've created another problem, that we're saying that Avraham didn't fully understand the prophecy of God. That's a problem for a prophet, not to fully appreciate his prophecy. That's not something we'd like to attribute to Avraham. Second place, we can see this tension is when Avraham says to his lads, we don't know if that was Eliezer, Ishmael was brought back into the family, or whether it's just two people, lads, helping out, carrying their things, their supplies, all the way for the 3 days. He says to them, he says, you guys stay here. I see the cloud, I see the mountain where we're going to offer the offering. So you stay here, and we, Yitzchak and I, will bow, and then we'll return to you. So he said, we will return. So it seems clear that although Avraham is a devoted servant and he's willing to offer his sacrifice, but he's giving it away. He's telling you, I don't really expect that I'm going to have to kill my son. We'll be back. Now, Rashi goes a step further and he says, we'll be back. He prophesied that they would be back. Now, it could be one of these prophecies that he prophesied, but he didn't really realize what his lips were saying, but it happened to be true. But if you say that it means what it says, that he's actually prophesying this, then it kind of solves the problem of Abraham wanting to slaughter his son, but it creates another problem, because now we have an Abraham who is not really being tested, because he knows that he's not going to have to offer his son. So that's a problem. But according to Rashi, he is aware that he may not have to offer his son. Then Isaac is a little suspicious. What's going on? We've got a knife. We've got fire, wood. Where is the offering? So Avraham says that ambiguous statement. He says, Elokim yirelo haseh leolah b'ni. God will show us the sheep for the offering, my son. So it's ambiguous. Is he going to give the son as the offering, or God will show him? If it means that God will show you the offering, then it means that Avraham is leaving open the possibility that there'll be no slaughter here at all. However, if we say that he means his son, then he's going there with the absolute intent of slaughtering his son. Now, the Avraham ben Rambam says a beautiful thing. The Rambam's son, Maimonides' son, lived in Egypt. He said a very insightful thing. He said as follows. He said, on the one hand, it's a push-off. It's an obfuscation of the facts. He said, oh, yeah, God will show us he's trying to make sure that Yitzchak is not up on what's going on here. He doesn't want to hurt his feelings. He doesn't want him to run away. So he makes it unclear. Does it beautifully, does it lovingly, calls him my son. It's a very sweet conversation. But nonetheless, he's pushing him off. Dechia. But in his pnimius, says the Avraham ben Rambam, in his pnimius, inside of himself, Avraham knows, he had a feeling that God would push away Yitzchak and bring in another offering. In other words, he had a hunch. What I like about this interpretation is it's not that he had a clear prophecy that he's not going to have to offer his son. Then what's the test? Rather, there's a tremendous test. He has to take him all the way to the brink, to the cliff, to the abyss, to offer him, and he might offer him, but he has a feeling, a hunch. Based on what? Based on the fact that God is merciful, God is kind, God wouldn't want human sacrifice. God promised him lots of things. He promised that Yitzchak would be his progeny. But it's just a hunch that indeed everything's going to be okay. So it's a test, but he has a hunch that it's not as difficult to test as he's actually being asked to make. We forgot to mention also that in the previous statement that we'll return to you, there's another possibility. Reb David Tzvi Hoffman says, we'll return to you, meaning I'll be back and my son will be back in a box. His bones will be back. His body will be back, but not the actual person himself. Now, Rabbi Soloveitchik takes a very clear stance on this. Rabbi Joseph B. Soloveitchik, the Rav, my Rabbi of blessed memory, takes a very clear stance. He says, there's no question about it. This was it. This was the moment. He's ready to give. As far as he's concerned, there's no Isaac. He's done. In his mind, he's done it already. It was so done that, you know what? That actually God considers it as if it was already done. He passed the test because in his mind, he's so completely resolved. He resigned himself. He surrendered to God to make this an offering. So Rabbi Soloveitchik insists that, no, this is a real challenge. There really is a binding of Isaac. There really is a demand that the human being give his most precious things to God. Or as Rabbi Sachs or Jonathan Sachs says, to recognize that we don't own our children. We're given everything. We don't own them. They're separate ethical entities, moral entities outside of ourselves. We don't control the family. We're not the executioners of the family like Judah or someone like that. But ultimately, as Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed out, we have to be ready to offer ourselves, not to God forbid, not to kill someone else, not to kill ourselves, God forbid, but to be absolutely devoted, full devotion. What about the ethical piece? What about the fact that how would God even want us to do something like that? Can't always ask questions, but you can make a prayer. We don't find that Abraham challenges God because you can't challenge a mitzvah. If the commander-in-chief says, do, you do. But you can pray. And that's what Abraham does. We say, it's an old prayer, it's mentioned, it's alluded to in the Mishnah in Tainis. It's said on Yom Kippur, it's said in the Slichos, Mi sha'ana la'Avram Avinu Bahar Moriah hu yanenu. The God who answered Abraham on Mount Moriah, he should answer us. What prayer did Abraham make at Mount Moriah? It's not in the text. It doesn't say anything about that in chapter 22. The answer is that the Midrash says, yes, he did pray. Even though he's standing there with that knife, he's ready to slaughter. But a prayer you can make. Challenge God about a direct commandment. You're commanded this and you challenge him. No. If God says he's going to destroy Sodom, you can question, well, do you really need to destroy Sodom? Should you destroy Sodom? But if God says to you, you do this, there are no excuses. There's no backpedaling. However, a prayer, God have mercy on me. God save me. God don't let me do this. That you can do. It's not an argument. It's a prayer. It's a hunch. It's a hope. And that one could argue, that he had to the very end. However, Rabbi Soloveitchik says no. Rabbi Soloveitchik takes the other view, that indeed we are asked to give of our kishkas, to give of our very essence in our service of God. Sometimes it's the sacrifice of a child on the battlefield. Sometimes it's to give your whole life for an organization, for a cause. Many different ways we do offer ourselves. And the offering is not half-hearted, thinking somehow you'll get something else out of it. Sometimes the offering is whole, complete, and absolute. Abraham set that model and that benchmark for total devotion. At the same time, maybe in the back of his mind, he had a hunch that it would work out just fine. Thank you for joining us here at the Anshei Sphard-Beth Emeth congregation for a discussion of the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. Join us each week for a discussion of the Parsha, holidays, also the how-to videos. And thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.
This has been 10 Minutes for Torah with Rabbi Joel Finkelstein. To learn more, visit asb.org.